You may say, but wasn't this the 60s? Yes, but only for some people, only in certain parts of the country. My bookshelves were more successful with Veronica than my record collection. In those days, paperbacks came in their traditional liveries, orange penguins for fiction, blue pelicans for non-fiction. To have more blue than orange on your shelf was proof of seriousness. And overall I had enough of the right titles: Richard Hogarth, Stephen Runciman, Hausinger, Eysenck, Empson, plus Bishop John Robinson's Honest to God next to my Larry cartoon books. Veronica paid me the compliment of assuming I'd read them all, and didn't suspect that the most worn titles had been bought second-hand. Her own shelves held a lot of poetry in volume and pamphlet form: Eliot, Auden, MacNeice, Stevie Smith, Tom Gunn, Ted Hughes. There were left book club editions of Orwell and Kestler, some calf-bound 19th-century novels, a couple of childhood Arthur Rackhams, and her comfort book, I Capture the Castle. I didn't for a moment doubt that she had read them all, or that they were the right books to own. Further, they seemed to be an organic continuation of her mind and personality, whereas mine struck me as functionally separate, straining to describe a character I hoped to grow into. This disparity threw me into a slight panic, and as I looked along her poetry shelf, I fell back on a line of Phil Dixon's. Of course, everyone's wondering what Ted Hughes will do when he runs out of animals. Are they? So I've been told, I said feebly. In Dixon's mouth, the line had seemed witty and sophisticated. In mine, merely facetious. Poets don't run out of material the way novelists do, she instructed me, because they don't depend on material in the same way. And you're treating him like a sort of zoologist, aren't you? But even zoologists don't tire of animals, do they? She was looking at me with one eyebrow raised above the frame of her glasses. She was 5 months older than me, and sometimes made it feel like 5 years. It was just something my English master said. Well, now you're at university, we must get you to think for yourself, mustn't we? There was something about the we that made me suspect I hadn't got everything wrong. She was just trying to improve me, and who was I to object to that? One of the first things she asked me was why I wore my watch on the inside of my wrist. I couldn't justify it, so I turned the face around and put time on the outside, as normal, grown-up people did. I settled into a contented routine of working, spending my free time with Veronica, and back in my student room wanking explosively to fantasies of her splayed beneath me or arched above me. Daily intimacy made me proud of knowing about makeup, clothes policy, the feminine razor, and the mystery and consequences of a woman's periods. I found myself envying this regular reminder of something so wholly female and defining, so connected to the great cycle of nature. I may have put it as badly as this when I tried to explain the feeling. You're just romanticizing what you haven't got. The only point of it is to tell you you're not pregnant. Given our relationship, this struck me as a bit cheeky. Well, I hope we're not living in Nazareth. There followed one of those pauses when couples tacitly agree not to discuss something. And what was there to discuss? Only perhaps the unwritten terms of the trade-off. From my point of view, the fact that we weren't having sex exonerated me from thinking about the relationship other than as a close complicity with a woman who, as her part of the bargain, wasn't going to ask the man where the relationship was heading. At least that's what I thought the deal was. But I was wrong about most things, then as now. For instance, why did I assume she was a virgin? I never asked her, and she never told me. I assumed she was because she wouldn't sleep with me. And where is the logic in that? One weekend, in the vacation, I was invited to meet her family. They lived in Kent, out on the Orpington line, in one of those suburbs which had stopped concreting over nature at the very last minute, and ever since smugly claimed rural status. On the train down from Charing Cross, I worried that my suitcase, the only one I owned, was so large it made me look like a potential burglar. At the station, Veronica introduced me to her father, who opened the boot of his car, took the suitcase from my hand, and laughed. "Looks like you're planning to move in, young man." He was large, fleshy, and red-faced. He struck me as gross. Was that beer on his breath, at this time of day? How could this man have fathered such an elfin daughter? He drove his Humber Super Snipe with a sighing impatience at the folly of others. I sat in the back, alone. Occasionally he would point things out, presumably to me, though I couldn't tell if I was meant to reply. "St. Michael's, brick and flint, much improved by Victorian restorers. Our very own Café Royal. Voila! Note the distinguished off-license with period half-timbering on your right." I looked at Veronica's profile for a clue, but received none. They lived in a detached red-brick tile-hung house with a strip of gravel in front of it. Mr. Ford opened the front door and shouted to no one in particular, "The boys come for a month." I noticed the heavy shine on the dark furniture and the heavy shine on the leaves of an extravagant pot plant. Veronica's father seized my case as if responding to the distant laws of hospitality, and farcically exaggerating its weight, carried it up to an attic room and threw it on the bed. He pointed to a small, plumbed-in basin. "Pee in there in the night if you want to." I nodded in reply. I couldn't tell if he was being all mateyly male or treating me as lower-class scum.